The first week of NCAA wrestling practices have officially started, and there's already a lot to talk about. Will this season be as exciting with all the Olympic red shirts? And who are the returners that you need to follow? Plus, FloWrestling has a new logo that has the wrestling community up in a flurry. And the Penn State lineup preview is finally here. So you know what? It's time to stop stalling and start talking wrestling. What's going on, wrestling fans? My name's Josiah, and welcome to the Fanco Wrestling Show. On this show, we talk all about wrestling news, but on my channel, we also talk about wrestling news tips and lifestyle. So if you're a big fan of the show, make sure that you subscribe to this channel to get all of that. And also, for my longtime listeners, make sure that you let me know if you want to see more live shows. I was debating doing some things the other day. I was messing around with some test runs, but it's finally exciting to dive into this wrestling season. So without further ado, let's talk about the world of wrestling. These, of course, are topics that aren't necessarily main topics of the show, but weren't some way to talk about. I have to talk about them, of course. So the first topic in the world of wrestling is that there are some Michigan wrestlers redshirting this season. It was announced this past week that Stefan Micic, Keenan Storr, Miles Amin, and Logan Massa will all be taking an Olympic red shirt. I'll be diving into that a little bit later in this show on all about the Olympic red shirts. Another big bit of news this week was the #1 recruit in the class of 2020, AJ Ferrari, finally made his commitment. He's decided that he is going to Oklahoma State. That's where he'll be furthering his wrestling career. Now, if you don't know who Ferrari is, he is a cadet world medalist, a 2-time Ironman champ, a Beast of the East champ, and a Reno Tournament of Champions champion. So this kid has a lot of potential coming into the college scene. Now, he's also a 2-time Texas state champion, and he really made a lot of moves over the last couple of years, moving from Blair to Virgin Catholic, back to his high school in Allen, Texas. Now, what was so big about this event with him, of course, making his commitment, it's interesting to see, of course, where these #1 recruits will go every single year. But as far as Ferrari goes, he really made it a event, I guess. It was kind of exciting to see where he was going to go. He kept the fans on their feet. It was a little bit of, I don't know, excitement for the fans, at least. You don't really see that happening. He even live streamed his announcement, which is really cool use of live stream. So, good luck to AJ Ferrari. Of course, his other schools were Nebraska, Ohio State, Penn State, and Rutgers, but he is going to Oklahoma State. Another thing going on in the world of wrestling is that the NWCA All-Star Classic is canceled. I'll link to this article in the description below as always. But this is a preseason all-star event, and this happens every single year. I think it's in their 53rd year or something like that, but it's kind of exciting because in the preseason, we see big heads face off before the season even begins, which a lot of times you don't get those big matches until January, February rolls around. But in the past, we've seen like Mark Hall and Zahid Valencia roll into that, which was really exciting to see that match. And of course, this doesn't count towards the record, but it somehow does affect the rankings, just not the record, which deters some guys from going into that. The reason that the event was canceled this year is kind of unknown. The director of the tournament sent an email canceling the event, and really that's that. Now, one of the other biggest things that happened this week in the world of wrestling is that California passed the bill. We have talked about this on this channel before, but California has passed a bill allowing college athletes to be paid. This is a complete game changer, And I can't wait to see where it will take athletes in the future. Please let me know what you think about college athletes getting paid. And without further ado, let's jump into the first main topic of the day. So I'm going to share with you why this wrestling season is going to be incredible because of the Olympic red shirts. Now, you may be wondering, how is it going to be incredible? We see so many of these guys not wrestling. How can this season even be mildly interesting? Well, I'm here to tell you that it's going to be phenomenal. Okay, so right now there are 16 different Olympic red shirts from many different schools. And I'll put this short list up here in just a bit. But there are many different red shirts from many different schools. So right now there are 2 true freshmen, two freshmen who are redshirting, and Berryessa and Omania. There are 14 Olympic or national qualifiers, and then there are at 8 separate weight classes. So there are actually no Olympic redshirts at 197 and 285, and there are 9 total All-Americans. Now, as I'm getting this Olympic redshirt list up, there are 3 national champions that are taking Olympic redshirt in Yanni Diakomalis, Nick Siriano, and Micaiah Lewis, and 9 total All-Americans. Now, I'll tell you why I think this is so exciting. First of all, let me put up this list of the Olympic redshirts. So this is the full list of the redshirts. A couple guys, of course, that stick out. You have Yanni, Nick Siriano, and Kai, who are all national champions. Max Dean is a national finalist of note to talk about here. And you have Jaden Ironman, Stefan Micic, Miles Amin. Of course, Micic and Amin both placed at Worlds, which was big for their countries, not for the U.S., but for their respective countries. So this is the full Olympic redshirt list. And, you know, seeing all these guys out, seeing that Yanni's not going to wrestle is kind of upsetting. You know, seeing that Nick Siriano, if you're a Rutgers fan, not wrestling is disheartening to see that this year. However, there is potential for many new champions, which I am super excited for. So right now, 4 of the weight classes for this year have champions who've graduated. So those weight classes already have new champion potential. There are 3 weights now that have Olympic redshirts. So that's 7 of the weights now that are pretty much, I don't want to say wide open, but yeah, wide open for a new champion. That leaves 3 returning national champions. And if you know who those are, that's Spencer Lee, Anthony Cassar, and Zahid Valencia. Now, Valencia, of course, is moving up a weight class, so we will see a new champion at 174. Now, we have a couple new weights that can have a completely new champion for the first time in many years. Of course, 141, Yanni's weight, he's won that the last 2 years. We'll see a new champion for the first time in 2 years. 149, Ashnault won last year. He's graduated. We will see a new champion. 157, of course, Nolf graduated. First time in a couple years. We'll get a new champion at that weight. And 197, same exact scenario. Now, of course, at a couple of these other weight classes, we do have returning champions. Spencer Lee returning at 125. Seth Gross, somebody you may have forgot about, but at 133, he will be returning. And Vincenzo Joseph at 165. He didn't win it last year, but he's won it in the past. Of course, 2-time national champion. Mark Hall at 174, looking to get that title back from his freshman year when he won it. Anthony Cassar is back to win it at 285, and then Valencia, of course, who's moving up a weight class, but he's looking to make an impact, of course, at that heavier weight. Now, what is the impact these Olympic redshirts have, and why am I so excited about it? Well, the reason I'm so excited about it is because we have more storylines for the fans. These Olympic redshirts are going to, because a lot of these guys are out, and we get to see new guys come up through the ranks and show that they deserve to be at the top, which is very exciting. As I mentioned, we're going to see a bunch of new champions, potentially. Another reason is that there's more opportunities for some of these smaller schools or lesser-known wrestlers. So if a smaller program can get an All-American in there, can get a high All-American or even a national champion there, where maybe they couldn't have won it if, you know, a Yanni was there from a bigger school. And now if somebody from a lesser-known school or a lesser-known wrestler can get in there and win it, that's big news for that program. It's an exciting year to grow the sport of wrestling, really. And then really overall, the other thing is that it makes for a more exciting 2021 national tournament, because of course 2020 is going to be exciting, but now 2021 we can see many weights where last year's champ comes back and now we have a new champ. So we have Nick Siriano facing off against somebody new at his weight. We have, you know, same thing with Micaiah Lewis. We have, well, I guess he wouldn't be the same with Vincenzo Joseph, but we could see many of these weight classes kind of go into effect here, which I'm very excited for. So it's sure to be an exciting 2020 season. Make sure that you subscribe to this channel to stay informed every single week. Now, the next topic of the day that I want to talk about is I have 7 more freshmen for you to watch this season. Of course, in the other video that I talked about already, there were 7 freshmen that I was excited to watch and that you need to see. Now, I have 7 more. Of course, we talked about Sammy Sasso, David Carge, Corey Teamer. So if you're interested in some of those freshmen, make sure you check it out after this video. I will make sure to link that for you. So right now, there are freshmen ranked at every single weight class except at 174 pounds, the only weight class where there are no freshmen ranked. Before I dive into this list, I want to mention one honorable mention that I didn't mention last time, but he's Gavin Teasdale. Gavin Teasdale will be at 133 pounds, but of course he has Austin DeSanto in his way. Teasdale is a redshirt freshman last year, transferred from Penn State to Iowa. Potentially Olympic redshirting this year, we don't really know yet. Now, what's exciting about this list right now, there are 3 freshmen ranked at 157 pounds, which is the weight class with the most freshman wrestlers, and 2 big schools with a lot of freshmen and potential, a lot of great potential in the future is NC State and Stanford. NC State has 3 freshmen ranked and Stanford has 2. So let's get into these wrestlers. The first wrestler I'd like to talk about is Joey Melendez. Melendez is a wrestler from UNC coming in hot as a redshirt freshman at 125 pounds. Right now he's ranked number 23. Last year he had a record of 20-4. One of his biggest matches was to another freshman in Jacob Camacho. He ended up losing that match, but it is a match of note. Now Melendez is a 2-time state champion from Illinois. Moving down the list at 133 pounds is Colin Girardi. Girardi from Virginia Tech at 133 pounds is ranked number 18. In 2018, he was not one of the top 100 ranked freshmen. I will be getting into some of these guys who were one of the top 100 ranked wrestlers. But last year he was 16-6 and a 4-time state champion from Virginia. Now, he had a pretty close match, as you see in this graphic right here, to Roman Bravo Young at the Southern Scuffle last year. Now, he did lose that match, but it wasn't sudden victory. So, of course, Roman Bravo Young was an All-American last year in his freshman year, so that really gives great potential for Girardi. Next up is Jarrett Tremblay. Tremblay, number 3 on the list, is another 133-pounder, ranked number 23 in the country, going to NC State. One of NC State's top incoming freshmen. He was ranked number 74 in the incoming recruiting class of 2018. 21-6 last year was his redshirt record. He was 4-time Michigan State champion. Now, other things of note, in high school, he was 194-1. So he was obviously a very tough guy in high school. And you see a lot of these guys are multiple-time state champions. But it's just exciting to see, he lost once in high school. He does have a win over Girardi, who's, of course, the last freshman that I wrestled. And he did wrestle Fix last year, but he did lose that match. Next up on the list is Cole Matthews, a guy from Pennsylvania. And Cole Matthews is going to Pittsburgh University. And he's 141 in that weight class. He's number 22 at 141 pounds. Last year's record was 21-4. He wrestled the Southern Scuffle, wrestled a couple of opens. Now in high school, he was an Ironman champ, or Ironman runner-up, Ironman runner-up, but he was a Powerade champion. He was the number 79 ranked wrestler in the recruiting class of 2018, and he was a 1-time Pennsylvania state champion. The next guy on my list is Will Lewin. Will is at 157 pounds from Michigan, number 28 recruit in the class of 2018. Last year, he didn't wrestle many matches. He was 9-2. He had a sudden victory win over Alec Pantelio, which is actually very, very interesting. I think what's exciting here, going back through some of these lists, going back through some of these guys' matches, is seeing who did they have wins over. And obviously, Alec Pantelio is a major win that Will has over him at the Southern, or at last year at the Michigan State Open. Now, Lewin is also a cadet world champion. You can see in this picture, of course, he's flaunting the flag around, which is very cool to see, and it's exciting to see how he's going to do at Michigan this year. Next up on the list is Shane Griffith. Griffith is a 165-pounder. He's ranked number 10 at 165 pounds. Of course, he's going to have some tough competition on his hands this year, but I'm interested to see how he does. Of course, last year at 165, we saw Mekhi Lewis come in as a freshman and win the weight. What could Shane Griffith do? I don't know. He is from Stanford. Another freshman from Stanford, you can see in my other video that I talked a little bit about in Woods. Now, Shane Griffith was 24-2 last year, 2 losses, 3-time New Jersey State champion. He did have a loss to Vincenzo Joseph at the scuffle, but it was a very, very close loss, 6-4. Now, Vincenzo keeps a lot of matches close. I mean, many of his matches are within a point or two, but Shane Griffith did keep him to a close match, which is good. Now, his best one was over Andrew Fogarty of North Dakota State. In high school, he was a Super 32 champion. He also won gold at the Pan Ams in freestyle, and he was a 2019 World Team Trials champion. And the 7th guy on this list is Emil Solins of Purdue. It was the number 23 ranked guy at 165 pounds. He had a redshirt record of 19-5, and he was a Ohio State champion. He wrestled a couple opens last year in Midlands. He was a Beast of the East runner-up in high school, as well as a placer at Ironman. Now, don't forget to check out the other 7 great freshmen coming in the class or in 2019 and 2020. That's something that you will not want to miss. Now, next up on this list are returning wrestlers. Let's talk about some returning wrestlers coming this season. So, the 2020 season, listen, it's quickly approaching. I mean, it's here. Preseason practices are here. So, if you're looking for some great competition to watch this year, I have you covered. So, in this list, I'm going to talk about some guys that really finished strong last year and have great potential in the 2020 season. I'm also going to discuss some red shirts, some medical red shirts, and guys maybe you just forgot about because they took last year off for whatever reason. So, on this list, and I have a list of 23 returning wrestlers that I need you guys to know about so you can follow this year. There are no undefeated wrestlers, and I do have different wrestlers at every single weight class. So I have wrestlers at every single weight class, and it's not just the number 1 and number 2 guys. I have a couple guys that are different. Now, they come from many different schools, many different weight classes. So let's get into it. Spencer Lee is the first guy, starting at 125 pounds. This is going to be an exciting weight to watch. Okay, so Spencer Lee is the first guy, a junior, a 2-time national champion, and he's looking for his 3rd title. I mean, that's really the biggest storyline here at 125 pounds. Last year, he was 23-3, had a couple of losses, Piccinini and Sebastian Rivera. Of course, he avenged his loss to Pitch at Nationals, but Rivera has those 2 losses on him, and Rivera will be looking to, Lee will be looking to avenge that loss this year. That's why Rivera is another guy to watch this year at 125 pounds from Northwestern. Rivera was 30-2 last year. He ended up placing 3rd at the national tournament last year. And like I said, he beat Lee twice. Now, one other guy that I'd like to throw in at 125 is Jack Mueller. Jack Mueller is a senior from Virginia. He was undefeated going into the national tournament and actually going to the national finals. Somebody that really, I think, kind of flew under the radar for whatever reason. But he made an impact and he wrestled well until the national finals when he did lose to Lee in what was a great match, really. So he ended up taking 2nd last year. And the next guy to watch moving up a weight class, somebody who is flying under the radar right now, maybe to you, is Seth Gross. Seth Gross is a senior who's transferred from South Dakota State to Wisconsin. Now, he's at Wisconsin this year. In his previous season that he wrestled, he was 29-1. He took a medical redshirt last year because he was injured early on in the season. Now, what's exciting is he's a returning champ from 2018. Now, we will not see the returning champ from 2019 wrestling this year in Nick Suriano because he is taking that Olympic redshirt year, but Seth Gross is looking for his 2nd title. And another guy who's in the finals last year, who's looking to overtake Gross and really wants that title, is Dayton Fix. Now, Dayton Fix may be taking an Olympic redshirt year. We really don't know yet because it's so early on in the season. But Dayton Fix of Oklahoma State was 35-2 last year. He had his loss in the finals to Nick Suriano and ended up being a runner-up in the national final. So those are the 2 at 133. At 141, A couple guys here, and one guy who has really made an impact and excited me. Please let me know if he's excited you at all, because he's for sure excited me. And make sure that you leave your comments down below and let me know who you're most excited to see wrestle this year, because this is my list, but who are you most excited to see? So Dom Demas, excuse me, is a sophomore. Came in last year and placed 4th at the national tournament as a freshman, which is phenomenal. All-American as a freshman was 34-9. Came in really, really hot and placed 4th. Right now, he's ranked number 1 at 141, and the guy ranked number 2 is Nick Lee. Of course, this is another weight that's just opened up a little bit because of Yanni not wrestling this year because of his Olympic redshirt year. So these two guys are looking to come in. And when Nick Lee had a loss to Dom last year, but he had a very exciting season at Penn State, moving up to 149. Is another guy who it wasn't number 1 last year, just like Dom, but he's number 1 this year in Austin O'Connor. O'Connor from UNC is ranked number 1 at 149. He placed 3rd at the national tournament last year, and I believe almost all of his losses were to seniors who graduated. So now he's kind of moved up that totem pole, and he's ready. He's ready to take up the mantle and look for that national title and look for many, many wins this year. He was 34-6 last year, looking to, obviously win over 30 matches again this year and look for that national title. But he will have somebody in his way in Brock Mahler, the sophomore from Missouri, was 33-5 last year. Now, he actually lost to O'Connor by a point last year at nationals, so that's why we could see these two flip-flopping at any time throughout the season if they wrestle early on. At 157, somebody that I'm personally really excited to watch wrestle is Hayden Hidlay. Hidlay of NC State has kind of, over the past couple of seasons, he's been, I don't want to say overshadowed, but he had some close matches with Jason Nolf. And Nolf was just always there to beat him, even though Hidlay had some very close matches with him. Of course, last year in the semifinals, Hidlay potentially even beat him if the ref made that decision go any other way. But this year he finally has his shot, okay? Hidlay finally has his shot, and he was 24-4 last year, placed 4th, but this year he's looking for 1st. Now, the other guy at 157 that I want to talk about is not the 2nd guy, not the 3rd ranked guy, but the 4th ranked guy, and Larry Early. Why am I talking about him? Early is a senior from Old Dominion. Old Dominion, he's ranked very high, and I'm talking about him because he beat Hayden last year in a duel with NC State and Old Dominion. He beat him 4-2. Now, he does have a loss to Deacon, who's ranked number 3, so we could see these guys going back and forth throughout the entire year. Now that we're halfway through this list, I want to make sure that you guys go over to Fanco Wrestling on Instagram to follow for more wrestling stats and to be updated throughout the entire wrestling season. Even whenever there aren't new videos, there will be more content on Instagram. Now, moving on to 165 pounds, Vincenzo Joseph. Vincenzo Joseph is the top-ranked guy at 165 pounds. He was 27-2 last year. His 2 losses, one in the national finals, one in the Big Ten finals, losing to Alex Marinelli. Now, of course, Marinelli is the other guy that I want to talk about. Marinelli from Iowa was also 27-2 last year. We'll see these guys go back and forth whenever they wrestle. Now, Marinelli was undefeated going into the national tournament. He beat Vincenzo twice in his entire career, actually. So he beat him last year, and then he beat him the year before in a duel. And there have actually been only 2 guys to beat Vincenzo Joseph twice, one of those being Isaiah Martinez and one of them being Alex Marinelli. I see this as a potential national championship matchup. These 2 guys are, I just like to see what this holds in store for us this year. Of course, Vincenzo Joseph is looking for his 3rd title last year and his 4th finals this year, so it's exciting to see how he'll do. Now, another Penn State wrestler that I'd like to talk about is Mark Hall. If you're not a fan of Mark Hall, well, this is the year to get into it and be excited about him, because he has had his 2nd undefeated season going into the national tournament. Of course, he didn't finish undefeated in the season. He ended up with 2 losses to Zahid Valencia. But this year, there's no Zahid Valencia because Zahid is moving up a weight class to 184. I'll get to him in just a bit. But Mark Hall last year was 30-1, and he's looking for his 4th straight national finals appearance, and he's looking for his 2nd title, 2nd since freshman year. Now, another guy at this weight class who's going to try to hold him off is Miles Amin. Miles Amin, the senior from Michigan, 22-4 last year, had a very close match with Mark Hall at the national tournament last year. Went into overtime, I believe. Now, these guys have wrestled 5 separate times, and every single time it's been within a point. And that's what is so exciting to me about Amin, is because we could see some close matches going into duels, Big Tens, and of course the national tournament. But the other guy who's in the Big Ten, who has moved up a couple weight classes, is Michael Kemmer. Michael Kemmer was, of course, wrestling 157 pounds a couple of years ago at Iowa still, but now after his year off, whenever he took a medical redshirt year, he's bumping up to 174, and he placed 7th as in his last year that he wrestled. This year, of course, he's looking to place higher. Right now, he's ranked number 4 at 174. Now, the other guy that I mentioned already is Zahid Valencia at 184. Now that we're moving up a weight class, just like Zahid. Zahid from Arizona State was 31-2 last year. This is, like I said, nobody on this list is undefeated. Nobody. Some of them may have been undefeated going to nationals, but none of them finished the season undefeated. Valencia is in his senior year. Valencia, of course, last year had 2 losses early on to Mark Hall and Daniel Lewis, and he ended up avenging those losses, both of them at the national tournament. Now, he is a 2-timer, and he's looking to become a 3-time champion this year. Can it be done? I believe so, but he's going to have some tough competition in Ben Darmstadt of Cornell. Last year, he took a medical redshirt year, but he's dropping down from 197 pounds. I think these two going back and forth, what's exciting to me is Zahid's bumping up, Darmstadt's going down, and although I thought Zahid looked very big for 174, I think he's a big guy. I think Darmstadt coming down is going to be tough for Zahid. It's going to be interesting to see how these two wrestle. Now, moving at 197 pounds, Colin Moore is the first guy I want to talk about, because last year he had a phenomenal season. Phenomenal. Made it to the national finals, had 3 losses, all to the same guy in Bo Nickel, who was the national champion, of course, but he blew pretty much everybody else out of the water. Finished with a 23-3 record, placed 2nd last year, and he's ranked number 1 at 197 pounds this year. The next guy at 197 is Kyle Cannell. Kyle, at 197 pounds, actually beat Colin Moore a couple years ago at the national tournament. He beat him, which was probably the story of the entire tournament. He pinned Colin Moore, who was the number 1 ranked guy at the time in 2018, and he basically helped Penn State win that national title back then. And now that he's at Penn State, I'm interested to see how he's going to do. He was 30-11 that season. That's why he was kind of an underdog whenever he went into the national tournament, but he ended up placing 3rd and was incredible to watch. Moving up to heavyweight, Anthony Cassar. First guy I want to talk about, the junior coming in from Penn State last year, returning not All-American, but national champion. Cassar was granted 2 more years of eligibility because of his 2 medical redshirt years, and he had some incredible wins last year. Of course, 2 victories over Gable Stevenson, only 1 loss on his record to Derek White of Oklahoma State, was 30-1 overall. The other guy that I just mentioned is Gable Stevenson. Gable Stevenson, the sophomore, is looking to avenge those losses to Anthony Cassar. Of course, these two have gone back and forth, and they will continue to go back and forth this year. Stevenson from Minnesota was 36-2 last year. Like I said, there's only 2 losses coming from Cassar. Ended up placing 3rd with 36 overall wins. I mean, that's just incredible. This is incredible to me. And the last freshman, or not freshman, but returner that I want to see this year and that you should be very excited about is Tanner Hall, the senior from Arizona State. He was 7-1 last year. Didn't place at the tournament in 2018, but he did take a redshirt year last year, not medical, not Olympic, but just a regular redshirt year last year. So because Kassar didn't wrestle him, I'm interested to see how that match goes, as well as he actually did wrestle Gable Stevenson in his redshirt year, but this was a sudden, this match went into sudden victory. So we could see Hall, who's ranked number 4 right now at the national level. I'll be excited to see how that goes. Please let me know, who are you most excited to see wrestle this year? Which returners do you want to see? And now we're going to move on to the next topic. And this next topic is the Penn State lineup preview. It's finally here, everybody, the Penn State lineup preview. I've been dying to talk about this, and you have voted. You, the Fanco Wrestling community, voted to see the Penn State lineup preview this week. Please make sure that you always comment and leave your suggestions in the comments below, because I am listening, and I only do the lineups that you want to see. So Penn State, after winning their 8th title in 9 years, Penn State's ready to make history yet again. It's that time of year again when Penn State gets into looking for national titles. Now, they are losing a couple guys. And 2 of those big guys that they're losing, of course, are Jason Nolf and Bo Nickel. 2 major losses, of course, multiple-time national champions, Hodge Trophy winner in Bo Nickel. It's upsetting to see them go if you are a Penn State fan. Now, what's exciting is a couple of the guys who we thought were going to graduate in Shakur Rashid, Anthony Kassar, they're still here. And they still have a year of eligibility. Kassar actually has 2. I'll get to that in just a little bit. And there actually is another 6-year senior on the team. Do you know who it is? I will get to that in just a bit. Now, unfortunately, Penn State didn't necessarily have a strong recruiting class in class of 2019. They had 1 out of the top 100. Now, of course, for Penn State, Kassar was not listed in the top 100 in his recruiting class, and he ended up winning the national title. So, really, recruiting classes don't necessarily always mean a whole lot. Now, as far as their schedule goes, their first goal of the season will be against Arizona State. We won't see Mark Hall versus Zahid Valencia. I mean, unless Mark Hall bumps up or Zahid bumps down, but because Zahid bumped up, we won't see that national finals match happen again. Now, the first match is at home on December 8th. We will also see Penn State wrestle at Iowa and Ohio State at home. This team right now is ranked number 1 by FloWrestling. But without further ado, let's dive into this lineup. So, talking about 125 pounds, there are a few guys here of note. A few guys to note here, in Devin Schnupp, who's a returner last year. He wrestled 3 seasons for Penn State. Of course, this weight has been almost cursed for the Nittany Lions, and it's been unfortunate because Nick Suriano was there, ended up transferring out due to his reasons. Gavin Teasdale was there at 125, ended up transferring out, and both of those guys are potential national champions. I mean, obviously, Suriano has already won a national title, but I think Teasdale is a potential national champion. But Schnupp is the first guy, the junior. Brody Teske is another guy, redshirt freshman. Right now, he's unranked. He went 6-2 last year, wrestled a couple of opens. Now, Teske is a 4-time Iowa State champion. He wrestled 176 matches in high school, only lost 1 of those. He was the top recruit in the class of 2018. A couple other guys at this weight are Brandon Meredith, a redshirt freshman, wrestled at the Messiah Open last year, went 3-1. Jack Davis, the redshirt freshman, who could go 125 or 33. He had a close loss to Vito Arujau of Cornell last year at the Bearcat Open. That was his closest match of the year, or best match of the year. Ended up losing that 5-2. And the other guy I want to mention, but he's actually not listed on Penn State's roster right now, is Matt Parker. You may have known I reported on this a couple of months ago that Matt Parker is transferring from Lehigh to Penn State, but he's not listed on the roster this year. I don't know if this is because he's taking an Olympic redshirt year or there are some other reasons here, but just somebody else to note there. The starter here, I think, is going to be Brody Teske, coming in as a redshirt freshman. Moving on to 133, the first guy, as I mentioned, is Jack Davis. Just a redshirt freshman coming in, could be in the lineup there. But the other two guys are Austin Klabaugh, the sophomore, wrestled a couple opens last year, and RBY, also known as Roman Bravo Young, the returner from last season, the sophomore, placed is ranked 6th right now at 133 pounds, placed 8th at the national tournament. He was 25-7 overall last year. He had an incredible win over Mickey Philippi, Luke Pletcher. Of course, he ended up losing a couple of those at the national tournament, but he did have an early win over Luke Pletcher, who placed high as an All-American. And he does have a couple of losses to Austin DeSanto. I think he's got to be looking to overcome those losses, and he was looking over the summer to improve and see how he can do this year and place a lot higher than he did even last year. But placing as a freshman is pretty impressive, and that's why Roman Bravo Young is going to be the starter at 133. At 141, a few guys here. One main guy, but a few guys, and the first guy is Nick Lee. Nick Lee, of course, right now is ranked number 2 in the country. Last year, he had a phenomenal year. Right now, he's ranked behind Dom Demas. Last year, he lost him at Nationals. But what's exciting this year is at 141, there's no Yanni. And while I think, Nick Lee could give Yanni a good match, I think it's just nice to have him out of the way. So now the path's clear just a little bit more. Now, Lee took 5th last year at the national tournament. It was 31-4. He had a great win over Joey McKenna early on, ended up losing him at the national tournament. He also had some nice wins over Keenan Storr, Max Murin, Chad Reds. Phenomenal season for Nick Lee. Breakout season, really, in my opinion. A couple other guys behind Nick Lee are Scott Obendorfer, the sophomore, Mason Lindenmuth, and Dom Giangeli. All these guys were on a couple opens last year. And then another sophomore is Joey Bloomer, who is a sophomore from Kiski Area High School, of course, in Pennsylvania. But the starter here is going to be Nick Lee. Now, at 149, last year we saw Jared Verclaren and Brady Berge kind of share this weight a little bit and wrestle a couple different matches, but Verclaren is a guy coming in 15-6. We could see him take an Olympic redshirt year. You never know. Penn State's very, very hush-hush about all of their lineup and what they're going to do, so we don't know exactly what's going to go on. But he was 15-6 last year. His best match was probably to Micah Jordan. I was there for that duel, Ohio State versus Penn State, which was an incredible match. He ended up, almost coming back, almost beating Micah Jordan, but ended up losing that in the end. Verclaren, if you don't know, also is a cadet world champion. That's why I think he may be looking to take that Olympic redshirt year. The other guys here, as I mentioned already, at 141 was Joey Bloomer, but we could also see Luke Gardner, the junior, who's 8-6 last year, wrestled a couple of opens, and then Bo Pfeiffer, who's also a junior, was 10-7 last year, lost to Jared Verclaren in 2018, but Pfeiffer is a 3-time Colorado State champion. So if Verclaren does take that Olympic redshirt year, at least he has a couple good backups to come in and start this year. But I think that Verclaren is going to be the starter at 149. At 157, the guy that is going to, we could see Pfeiffer moving up to 157. And the other guy I mentioned already is Brady Berge, the sophomore. Right now, he's ranked 5th in the country by FloWrestling. He ranked behind a couple guys like Hayden Hidlay, Caleb Leung, 2 guys in the Big Ten who are going to give him some trouble. But he is moving up. He's moving up, and it'll be interesting to see how he does against some of these guys. He was 20-5 last year at 149. Like I said, some of his best wins were over Pat Lugo, a ranked Jared Prince, and Jarrett Deegan. He's a 2018 Junior Worlds bronze medalist, so we could also see him take an Olympic redshirt year. We just don't know yet. The other guy here is Paul Fati, a redshirt freshman, is 4-5 at the Open. So we could see Pfeiffer probably jumping in behind Berge if Berge takes that Olympic redshirt year, but I think that Berge is going to be ultimately the starter at 157 pounds. Now, the next guy on this list is Vincenzo Joseph. Vincenzo Joseph, coming at 165 pounds, of course, will be very exciting to watch this year. A 3-time national finalist, 2-time national champion. Now, he's ranked first in the country right now at 165. What's nice is the returning national champion isn't returning this year in Mekhi Lewis, so that leaves the road a little bit more open. Of course, he's going to have some tough battles with Alex Marinelli of Iowa, just like he has in the past. Now, he was 27-2 last year. He's still looking for that Big Ten championship, even in his senior year, and I'd love to see him get that this year. And I think he can. I think that if he beats Marinelli, he's just going to have to find a way to do that. Now, he also has wins. Everybody wants to talk about everybody's losses, but he does have wins over Josh Shields, Isaiah White of Nebraska, Logan Massa, and Chance Marceller. So he has really shown his dominance at 165 pounds in his weight class. The other guy at this weight class is Mason Manville, a sophomore. Could see him taking an Olympic redshirt year. He's actually not even listed on the roster right now. There's a 2017 Greco-Roman World Team member, so we could see him taking that Olympic redshirt year. Because he's not on the roster, I could see that as the reason why. And there are a couple redshirt freshmen as well as true freshmen such as Carter Starachi. So I think the guy really, though, that's going to star at this weight is, of course, Vincenzo Joseph. Now, the next guy on this list is Mark Hall. Mark Hall is going to be the starter at 174 pounds. Mark Hall, of course, is a three-time national finalist, a one-time national champion looking for his second title. Now that Zahid Valencia is out of the way, not saying that he couldn't beat him because obviously he did last year. He showed that, but it's nice to have him out of the way and move up a weight class. Now, he's also going to have his hands full with Miles Amin and Michael Kemmer at 174. It was 30-1 last year. It was Mark Hall. And he's moving. This is his second undefeated season going into the national tournament. It was 62-2 over the last two seasons, with those two losses only coming to Zahid Valencia. Now, the other guy here is Richie Haywood, who's a true freshman, but I see him taking that redshirt year, and he could also star at 184, but as I said, probably going to take that Olympic redshirt year. Now, the next guy on this list, on this roster at Penn State, is Shakur Rashid, and this is where our six-year seniors start coming in. The last three guys on Penn State's roster are six-year seniors, which I already know is going to upset a lot of people, but that's the name of the game, and this is how it is. And if you're a Penn State fan, it'll be exciting to see how they do. Now, Rashid is ranked 6th by FloWrestling right now, 6th in the country, behind Zahid Valencia, moving up a weight class, Ben Darmstadt, Nina Bonacorsi, just name a couple of guys. Was 21-2 last year. Of course, he had a very exciting season, was undefeated going into nationals. Some controversy at the Big Ten tournament with Miles Amin, and his best win was over Taylor Venz. Now, the other guy here is Aaron Brooks, the true freshman, four-time Maryland State champion, if you didn't know, and it was the number 2 recruit in the class for 2018 behind Gable Steveson. So that's very interesting to see. Now, he trained at Titan Mercury Wrestling Club last year. Could see him take an Olympic redshirt year. It was a 2017 cadet world champion, and that's why I say we could see him take that Olympic redshirt year, because he is a freestyle wrestler at heart. A 2018 silver medalist at the Junior World Tournament, and he actually wrestled a couple of college tournaments in high school. So that's why this is true freshman year, even though he graduated in 2018. It's his true freshman year. We also have Austin Hoops, a redshirt freshman, was 6-6 last year, so a couple of opens. And then we have a couple other freshmen coming in here. But the starter here that I think is going to start is Shakur Rashid. At 197 pounds, a transfer coming in is Kyle Connell. Kyle is coming in from Kent State, of course. He coincidentally kind of helped Penn State win the national title in 2018 in Cleveland, Ohio. How did he do that? Well, he pinned the number 1 ranked wrestler in the country in Colin Moore, knocking him down in the consolation brackets and essentially helping Penn State win that national title because Moore couldn't score more points. Now, Connell had a standout tournament that year in 2018. Last year, he had a medical redshirt year. Right now, he's ranked 3rd in the country, behind Moore, behind Patrick Bruckey. It's understandable that he's ranked behind these guys right now, taking that year off. And really, in his year before, he was 30-11, so he had some losses on the season, but it'll be exciting to see what he does this year for Penn State. The other guy here is a true freshman, Michael Beard. Michael Beard, another possible Olympic redshirt. Again, like I said, we just don't know. We just don't know. But if you want to know and if you want to be in the know, make sure that you subscribe to this Fanco Wrestling channel where we talk all about that wrestling news. Now, he, from Penn State, did not wrestle at Penn State last year. Was 12-0 though. He did wrestle a couple of college tournaments in high school. There are a couple other freshmen at this weight class, so we'll see a couple guys moving up in the future. But the starter here is probably going to be Kyle Connell. He's going to be the starter at 197. And at 285, we're going to see Anthony Cassar returning. Cassar will be returning for his what technically be his only junior year. It'll be like his 5th senior year, but no, he's another 6-year senior. I guess he's a junior, is he senior, whatever. He's ranked 1st in the country now, the returning national champion for Penn State, and I believe the only returning national champion for Penn State. Of course, he's going to have some tough guys in his weight, in Stevenson, in Jordan Wood, and Tanner Hall, and Jerry Hino. It's going to be a tough year for Cassar, but he could pull it off again. He was 30-1 last year. He avenged that loss that he had early in the season to Derek White. Ended up beating Gable Stevenson twice in the postseason, which was exciting to see as a Penn State fan. And it'll be exciting to see what he does. Now, the other guy at 285 is Seth Neville. Seth Neville is a top recruit in the class of 2018, a 4-time California State champion, the brother to Nick Neville, who, of course, wrestled as an All-American for Penn State a couple of years ago, and his other brothers at Fresno State in AJ Neville. Now, overall, I do think that Cassar's ended up going to get this starting position, but as a team, I think Penn State has potential for 7 All-Americans. I think that this team really has that potential this year. With 5 potential champions, I'm just going to be honest with you. I think there is potential for 5 guys from Penn State to win. And it's going to be a close race this year yet again between Ohio State, but more importantly, between Iowa. Iowa's coming in with a team that has the potential to have 10 All-Americans, and I'm not lying about that, has that potential. So Penn State has to pull out something great. Yet again, they've done it in the past. Can they do it this year? Now, if you love these lineup previews, make sure you check out the other lineup previews on this channel because I talk all about those every week on the Fanco Wrestling Show. Now, the next topic that I want to talk about there are a couple Penn State wrestlers who are still wrestling, and you may be wondering, how the heck are these guys still competing? And it's a really valid question. Guys like Shakur Rashid, Anthony Cassar, and Kyle Connell, who Connell, of course, is a transfer from Kent State to Penn State, but how are these guys still on the mat? How are they still allowed? Like they're like 30 years old. They're not actually 30 years old, but I'm just making a point. So Penn State has 3 6-year seniors, and actually Cassar's, I don't believe he's considered a senior because of how his eligibility works, but I will get into that and talk about how each of these guys are seen and how, like, what weight class, or not weight class, but what year they're in. So the first, and how they got there, okay? So first up is Anthony Cassar. Anthony Cassar is technically a junior, and that's because of his eligibility right now. He started in 2014, 2015. That's when each of these guys started. He took a redshirt year. Then he got hurt in 2015, medical redshirted, didn't wrestle any matches. And same with 2016, didn't wrestle any matches. And I think that's what really helped allowed him to continue to wrestle in this year and next year. He was granted 2 years of eligibility. And because of that, technically his 2017 season was his freshman season. It was 15-2. And his sophomore year, or his senior year, I guess what we thought it was, he was 30-1, won the national title. Now coming in this year, a 6-year senior, a junior, whatever you want to call him, he has a couple years of eligibility left, and it'll be interesting to see how he does. So that's how Cassar has that eligibility. Now, as far as Shakur Rashid, the other Penn State wrestler, started in 2014 with that redshirt year. redshirt freshman was 17-7. Then he had a medical redshirt year in 2016 towards the beginning of the year. He only wrestled in one open, and then he was hurt after his first duel versus Lehigh. And that's really why I think a lot of these, if you're hurt, first couple matches of the season, the NCAA is going to allow you to take that medical redshirt year and be granted another year of eligibility. Now, from then on out, his story is pretty common. He was, I guess, technically a senior last year, so he's a 6-year senior this year, and that's why Shakur is granted that extra year of eligibility. Now, the next guy is Kyle Connell. Kyle started in 2014, wrestled his freshman year, same with his sophomore year. Now, he took his redshirt year in 2016 and only wrestled one match, and that's because he wrestled a couple freestyle tournaments, and that's really kind of why I think that also helps play into this. He's not going to be granted another year of eligibility, at least as far as I'm concerned, but he did wrestle in his junior year, had a crazy standout national tournament, and then in his 2018, he had his medical redshirt year last year. He got hurt in one of the first duels of the season, which was very unfortunate, and that's why this year is his senior year. Now, the other guys that I do want to talk about at Penn State are other guys who could become 6-year seniors. So the first guy here is Aaron Brooks. Aaron Brooks, the 4-time Maryland State champion. And I wasn't even going to do this topic this week, but I found it just very peculiar that Penn State was doing things like this, and not doing things like this that anything's wrong with it, but just that there are different things happening here, different things at play. Now, Aaron Brooks took 1 year off of training. He was training last year, 2018-2019. He actually graduated high school in 2018, and during that time, he even wrestled a couple of high school tournaments in his college year. So technically, because he was training last year, and we could see him take that Olympic redshirt this year, very high likelihood that Aaron Brooks takes that Olympic redshirt year, he could be wrestling up until 2026, when that would be his redshirt senior year, and that's assuming that he's granted that Olympic redshirt and that he's also, if he's even eligible for that, and as well as what if he's hurt? There are a couple things at play here. So he could be 25 years old by graduation, but another guy who could be a 6-year senior, and there's one more guy who could be a 6-year senior, and that's Seth Nevels. Seth Nevels also took 1 year off of training in 2018-2019, and he graduated high school in 2018, was a top recruit, and like I said, we can see a very similar situation to Aaron Brooks and to a lot of these other guys. So what do you think about this? Are you excited to see these Penn State wrestlers wrestle this year? I know I am. I'm very excited that Kassar is back yet again for another year to kick some of the competition's butt. Now, next up on the list, and this is a very exciting show, a lot to do here. Next up on the list is talking about FloWrestling. FloWrestling has a new logo that has sent the wrestling community up in a tizzy. Is it good? Is it bad? What's the deal with the new FloWrestling logo? I had to talk about this because wrestling fans are freaking out about it. First of all, I want you to tell me, what do you think? Do you like FloWrestling's new logo? Do you think it's horrible? Do you think it's something that you could get used to? Now, I'm going to give my opinion as somebody who graduated from Penn State with a degree in marketing. I worked at an advertising firm for a year. I know a little bit about branding, a little bit about marketing. Now, of course, FloWrestling, and I will put up the graphic here showing you guys the old logo versus the new logo in case you haven't seen it yet. Now, the old logo, of course, is green. The new logo is red. This new logo is known as the Hawk. I will link to this story in the description below that Flow Sports has. This Hawk, as it's called, represents the forward-leaning stance of an athlete in motion. That's what it stands for, okay? It's supposed to unify all these sports brands at Flow Sports. If you didn't know, there are actually multiple different Flow brands. Flow Wrestling is not the only one. Flow Wrestling, Flow Marching, the marching band, Flow Football, Flow Track, 20 plus sports that Flow Wrestling has. If you didn't know about that, now you do. This is supposed to unify all of those brands. Now, there's also a new tagline that goes along with this. This is kind of why they're relaunching. There's a new tagline. It's called "Be There." it's all right, be there. I guess you could be there at that sport with all their streaming, because Flow is streaming over 10,000 live competitions across those 20 sports. And like I said, the big reason they're doing this is because they're launching the Android app as well, and it just really garners more press for that. Now, what are my personal thoughts? My personal thoughts on this situation: I don't like the red. I don't like the red over the green. I would rather that they have kept it a green, and I just think the green kind of is Flow. When I see red, I don't think of Flow. Now, taking this, this has been alive, launched for a little over a week now, and it's grown on me a little bit. I don't think it's horrible. At first, I thought it was a bad move. Wasn't a big fan at all. I think the design's a little bit sleeker. I think all the stuff about, the forward-leaning stance of an athlete in motion, to be honest, I think all of that's just a bunch of BS made up by the advertising agency that they hired to do this. That's just something that they say, like, oh, it's a forward-leaning stance. Okay, it's an F. It's a cool, font. That's what it is. It's really nothing more than that. I'm sorry. That's just my opinion. That's total BS, advertising BS, okay? I do like the logo. It's grown on me. Brands do change over time. You see Coca-Cola, you see PepsiCo, you see all sorts of brands change over time. Usually it's not as drastic as a change as Flow did, but I think fans will get used to it. Now, listen, it's a part of the brand, and if changing makes sense to them, then that's what they have to do. Now, moving on to the last topic of the day. Is there too much pressure on college athletes? Are news sites, such as FloWrestling, such as Fanco Wrestling, which isn't necessarily a news site, but such as the Open Mat, such as Intermat, are news sites and newspapers, are they putting too much pressure on college athletes? And this story isn't necessarily stemming from anything particular that's come out in the news, but more the fact that it's been something on my mind that I wanted to talk to you about. I've seen a lot of comments on FloWrestling, on different sites, after the World Championships, after Team USA didn't win the the World Championships, saying Flow is kind of maybe too in the face of these athletes with all these interviews, and saying that it put too much pressure on these athletes. And I think that holds some merit. I think that some sites tend to be a little negative also towards guys, and putting other guys up on a podium, putting certain guys up on a podium, tearing down other people. And that's why here at Fanco Wrestling, one of the biggest things to me as the creator is keeping this brand positive towards these athletes, because as we're going to get to in a little bit, these guys they're college athletes. And of course, the guys on the world level are more seen as pro. However, it's upsetting to me whenever there's too much negativity, whether it's in YouTube comments from fans. I think that's, it's upsetting that people do that, but I think that's just online internet trolls, which is a shame, but it happens. As far as news sites, I think they should always be kind of keeping it positive about these guys, because they are, young men and women. Now, one thing that I want to share is the Gavin Teasdale story. The Gavin Teasdale story, of course, if you haven't heard, and I'm sharing this only because he shared it on the PA Power Wrestling podcast. Make sure you check out PA Power Wrestling. Phenomenal news site. But he went on the PA Power Wrestling podcast a couple of months ago and discussed his transfer from Penn State to Iowa. He's kind of said in his senior year of high school into his freshman year of college, he started getting into a bad lifestyle. Maybe some parties, some drugs, some minor drugs, things like that. Just a different lifestyle. I don't know all he did. Don't need to know all I did. I don't like the rumor mill, but that's what he had said in this podcast. And I think a lot of that probably came from the pressure that he had on his life from a lot of these news sites. Teasdale, and of course I can say this because he's from the Whitfield, back where I'm from. I literally saw these newspapers with his Teasdale in the headlines. And then you see, it's great when it's all positive, when he's winning state titles. But then what happens whenever he does something wrong? Of course, the headlines: state champ transfers out of Penn State, Teasdale out of Penn State. What's wrong? What's going on? And to me, for a young athlete and for a young man to see that, as an he's an 18-year-old kid, to see that, it's upsetting to me, and I'm not even the one going through that situation. These are 18 to 22-year-old college athletes. Now, the reason that I kind of get into this too is when I first started Fanco Wrestling, it's very exciting to talk about all these wrestlers, and I didn't know all these guys. Still don't know all of them, but I don't think there's a lot of negativity at all. But there were a couple things here and there, and then once I got to the national tournament, I think one of the biggest guys who takes a lot of hits, okay, is Austin DeSanto. Whether you like him or not, I think he takes a lot of hits, and there's a lot of pressure on him as an athlete, as a human. And once I was at the national tournament, I was on the floor, actually. I was watching his match, watching him warm up, and it for some reason that hit me then. Listen, he's an 18-year-old, or not 18, he's older than 18, but he's a young kid, a college kid. When he's not here, he's going to class, he's studying, he's going to practices multiple times during the week, multiple times a day. He has some sort of social life, whatever that may be, and he's competing on a national level. And there are people on the internet who just want to come out here and attack him for whatever reason. And yes, he has a boisterous personality. Understandable, okay? But to straight up attack an athlete, straight up bring them down, to me, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see it in the comments of any videos. And it's important to me to keep things positive. So that's kind of me up on my soapbox talking about this topic. Please, I want to hear what you have to say about this. Do you think that there's too much pressure on college athletes? I think that it's better to bring them up and keep things more positive than to keep tearing them down. So let's stop tearing them down and keep those conversations positive. And everybody, that's going to do it for the Fanco Wrestling Show this week. I want to thank you for watching this show, and until next time, I'll see you next week.